Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, there is a great deal of talk at the moment about the future of work, what it will look like. Will it be hybrid working, where we can work from anywhere, any device, and any location at any time? But today, I want to explore the immediate future of automation and the unified workforce, where work is distributed and integrated across AI-driven robotic workers and human workers. And it's the combination of the two working seamlessly side by side that really interests me, especially when we bring in no-code and automation of automation technology, and how the creation of automations is increasingly becoming the responsibility of the human workers themselves and not just their IT department. And RPA-based automation is also moving up the food chain in terms of its impact, because it was traditionally used for tactical process efficiency gain, but it's now becoming central to achieving core corporate goals such as growth, profit, competitiveness, customer service, and the list goes on and on. So today, I've invited Eric Tyree, and he's the head of AI at Prism. And Prism has operations globally, currently listed on the London Stock Exchange. It has grown fast from around 50 million when it was listed way back in 2016. And they also have a great long-term perspective on the industry and its evolution, especially considering they have a global client base, including Jaguar, Land Rover, Siemens, and Google, etc. But enough from me. If you're fascinated by how technology and the human workforce is going to work together to achieve even more, buckle up and hold on tight, because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to London, where Eric is waiting to share his story and explore this topic further. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Eric. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. And thanks for having me. So I'm the head of artificial intelligence at Prism. And Prism is basically a software robotics company. So my job is to put brains in the robots. And I lead a team of people, a mix of AI and software engineers. And really our job is to push the tech. And so work hand in glove with the product side, but also we spend a lot of time talking to customers, talking to analysts, trying to figure out, where does the market want to go? At the same time, providing thought leadership and telling the market where to go.
Now, I don't want to date you here, but not only are you the head of AI at Prism and an expert in the commercial application of AI and advanced analytics, but you also have over 20 years experience in related product and technology leadership roles. But a question I've got to ask is, where did it all begin? Can you share your origin story and where that passion for tech came from and what put you on this path?
Yeah, I was supposed to be a brain scientist. That was the original plan. I wasn't really interested in tech originally. I was trying to figure out how the brain worked, and I was doing a course in neural computation, which is the sort of mathematical and computer modeling of brain function. And the sort of cathartic moment was I had an idea for a thesis, or two ideas actually. One was something to do with the visual system in the brain. And the other bit was I'd read this really interesting paper using the same modeling techniques to arbitrage currency exchange rates. And I was kind of fascinated by that and just seeing, that if you looked at financial markets, that there were patterns and interactions that were analogous to brain function. And I thought, that's really interesting. So I went to my thesis supervisor and said, what do you think? I've got these two ideas. And he kind of just looked at me and said, do you want to get a job when you get out of here? And I said, yeah. And he says, do the exchange rates. And so I did it. I got, from there, wound up with funding for another postgrad. And it was sort of was on the tech route since then. This is early 90s. So, I've been doing this since, in fact, I've been doing AI so long. When I started, AI was a dirty word. If you wanted to get funding for something, you didn't call it AI, you called it something else. And now it's gone full circle, and AI is the magic word for everything. But it's the same technology. But anyway, so I did that post-grad. I wound up in a small startup that was very successful. And what happened there is I set up their AI team, but all the new product ideas were also coming through that team. So over time, I became the product director, and I've been in this kind of dual technology commercial role ever since. After that, did another startup, and then I wound up at Capita, which is a large UK outsourcer. And they rang me up and said, look, we've got 50 odd businesses with data assets of one form or another. Would you mind joining and being the sort of data monetization fairy, and where you kind of go from one business to another, look at what data they've got, and then look at their what it is they actually deliver, products or services, and see if you can help them monetize that data or enhance their product offerings. And then I really enjoyed that because there was a heavy tech side to it. It was very entrepreneurial. It was sort of combining what you can do with data, what you can do with AI, what you can do commercially with it. And the one place I had an enormous amount of joy with was a small corporate travel agency that they owned. And I was stunned, and this is probably 2014, somewhere around there, that the corporate travel space, which is huge, I mean, it's enormous, multi-billion-dollar industry, never had the data revolution at all. I mean, I was really, really, really floored by that. And so I started working with them, and we started doing a lot of really interesting stuff. And then the largest corporate travel agency in the world, which handled about a third of all corporate travel on the planet, rang me up and said, do you want to do this globally? I'm like, yeah. And wound up doing an enormous corporate transformation project with them. We had a lot of success applying, data techniques and AI techniques in unconventional ways. I mean, we did the usual thing you do where, you're doing personalization on booking tools and creating that kind of Amazon-like experience when people are booking travel. But we also did a lot of really interesting stuff around revenue optimization and a lot of sort of back office automation, and data-driven processing that made a huge difference to the business. And I was happy as a clam. And then COVID hit, and business travel pretty much ended. And right about that time, Blue Prism were tugging on my shoulder and saying, "Hey, do you want to head up AI and a robotics company?" And I thought, well, yeah, that would be very interesting. And especially once I realized what people were doing with Blue Prism and RPA and how it was being used to automate a lot of the stuff I was automating at CWT and I'd done at Capita. And I thought, this is amazing, because this is a company that's doing it at scale and across industries. So that's how I wound up here. And again, a lot of what I'm doing is I'm focusing on AI technology and robotics, but very much from an automation perspective. In other words, thinking about, if I'm an operations manager in a bank, I'm the COO, what am I really worrying about? And how is automation going to help me? And I think that's important, because that's where the market's going now. It's gone from being a tactical technology to a strategic one. So anyway, that's how I wound up here. I was sort of a brain scientist who lost his way 20 odd years ago.
What a great story. And I also love the fact that in the 90s, AI was a swear word that would scare away any investor. Oh. When you compare that to now, where even companies that have got zero AI kind of put AI in the title to try and attract investors.
Yeah. And I think what's happened, what's also interesting is compute's gotten cheap. And a lot of the so what happened in the 80s, I think AI didn't live up to its promises. And but what happened in the sort of over the last 20 years is compute's become so cheap that the really interesting AI that existed in the 90s even is now practical and cheap. So I think what happened is the computing caught up to the thinking in AI, and suddenly AI, had its second birth.
So that path, of course, led you to Blue Prism, which does pride itself on making work smarter and more productive. So people are free to do great things. And it also has a global client base, including big names such as Jaguar, Land Rover, Siemens, Google. I could go on and on there. But for people that are hearing about Blue Prism for the very first time, could you just tell me a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're solving for your customers with technology?
Sure. So, all right, imagine you work at a mobile phone company or a bank, and you want to provide the best customer service you possibly can. So when you're thinking about customer service, you probably want to start at the beginning. So let's start with opening an account. And what I want to do is when someone calls up to open an account, I want that process to be as seamless and as friendly as possible. So today, what would happen, or in the old days, what would happen actually, is you'd ring up your phone company or you'd ring up a bank, say, I'd like to set up an account. You get on the phone with somebody and they would keep going, can you hold on a minute? I'm going to put you on hold. I got to go do something. And they go away. And what they're doing is they're entering your details into a system. They're doing credit checks, all those things that you have to do to set up an account. And it's not a very pleasant experience. You're kind of talking to somebody for a minute, they're on hold for 5 minutes, and you're talking to somebody again. So the way people are using Blue Prism and RPA technology is automating those gaps where you're going on hold. So for example, when I ring up a bank today and I'm setting up an account, the caller is talking to me continuously. When it comes time, say, to do the credit check or to enter my details into the system, you're using a robot to do that. So all the caller is doing is engaging with the customer and telling the automations when to execute on the account opening procedures. So what it means is, from the customer's point of view, I'm getting a much better experience. It's very efficient. I can set the account up quickly, or whether that's over the phone or even online. From the call handler's point of view, they're doing what humans do best, which is talking and engaging with other human beings. In the meantime, we've taken out a huge amount of cost on the account setup side because it's largely automated now. So the way to think about what Blue Prism does, it's the automation of back office and even front office business processes on top of your existing systems. Because that's the other sort of revolution with RPA, is that it's very inexpensive. In the old days, if you said, I want to automate account setup, you would ring up your IT department and they'd say, sure, we can do that for you. That's going to cost $10 million and it's going to take 2 years to build, because we're going to build you a whole new account opening system. With RPA, you're just automating the processes running on your existing systems. So you can do it in months and for a tiny fraction of the cost it used to be. So that's what it is. It's back office automation, much more efficient, much more cheaper than anything that's been around before.
And the question I've got to ask is, how do you see the immediate future of automation? And the reason I ask this is because, as an ex-IT guy, I clearly remember when new tech was put into place, stakeholders would always see new technology and an efficient way of working as actually an opportunity to reduce headcount. But the way I like to see it is a unified workforce where work is distributed and integrated across AI-driven robotic and human workers, where you've got the best of both worlds working side by side. Is that what you see, and do businesses get that messages?
Yeah, absolutely. So go back to think what RPA is and what automation is a form of labor.
Yeah.
And what I found was really fascinating is, if you look at where RPA is in intelligent automation is being taken up, it's primarily in knowledge businesses and service industries, or in the service or knowledge component of industries. And what our customers are saying to us is that they're not replacing jobs with automations. They can't get enough people in the first place. So in other words, what it is they can't attract enough people with the right skills that they need to do what they want to do. So they're using automation actually to free up human capital to be able to allocate it more efficiently. And I'll give you an example of this, which is if you look at a retail bank, what they've realized is that to compete with fintech, they need to be able to be much more efficient than they were before. And it's now becoming existential. So they look at, well, what are people doing? And where should I be automating? And what they've realized is they spend an inordinate amount of human time on compliance, making basic decisions, approving payments, things like that. And they're not spending as much time as they would like with their customers. So when they look at automation strategically, what they do is they say, well, I'll tell you what, isn't it a better way to spend my human workforce in front of my customers and automate where there is no customer contact? And so they build automation strategies on that basis. So effectively what they're doing is they're automating, say, compliance and basic sort of, payment approvals, very tick boxy kind of stuff. Then taking those people and putting them on the account management side, solving customer problems, or encouraging them to buy more products or what have you. So in effect, it's a automation has become a capital allocation tool for both monetary capital, but human capital as well. But it's very rare actually that you hear about people or companies, removing jobs, by and large, are doing is shifting them away from manual labor to more cognitive, or I would say emotional labor. So that's where you're engaging with somebody as a human being, right? And you're trying to understand how they're feeling, and on the basis of that sentience, what's the right course of action I need to take, to address that customer's issues.
And with the increase in no-code and automation of automation technology, do you think that the creation of automations is increasingly becoming the responsibility of those human workers themselves, and not just the IT department? Because those days have gone, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's the big revolution. And if you look at our AI strategy, it's trying to fuel that revolution as much as we possibly can. So what we want to happen, and what our customers are demanding, is that if you want to create a new automation, the workers who are involved in that business process should do it themselves. So you need no-code technology. You need technology that means that automations can be shown a task and can then execute it. So you wind up with this two things. One is that you want to get the programming of automations at the same level as, like, maybe working with a spreadsheet. So that there's a substantial minority of employees could actually and comfortably work with and create automations. It means also that you need the tools that allow people to work on the interfaces between humans and digital workers. So we refer to our automations as digital workers. And that, for example, if I'm, say we'll go back to a banking example. So take a mortgage desk, and I'm trying to automate the mortgage desk. So that should be automated by the people in the mortgage desk themselves. And let's say, for example, I got to process an application. I can automate everything up to the point where, for regulatory reasons, a human has to sign it off. What you want is a no-code interface so that a person working in that mortgage desk can actually write that interface. So in other words, they can say, okay, here's the work coming from the digital worker. Here is the screen with the document with options to sign it off or not sign it off and give reasons. They can code all that themselves through point and click, right? And then now what they have is a process where you've got an automation. Automation hands the application to human. Human takes whatever action they need to take, then hands it back to the digital worker. And that's critical. The other reason for our interest in this is that our customers want to scale their workforces. So they want to be able to have a unified workforce where you've got a fully integrated human digital workforce with underlying systems. And they want to grow the digital component of it as fast as they possibly can. So if we can get the technology to the state where I don't even have to program it, I can just show the video of a process, and the automation can execute it on that basis. They can scale much more quickly. And that's the ultimate de-skilling of automation, is that you train a robot the same way you train a colleague. You just show it what to do, and it just does it. And we're very far down that road now. I mean, we've got it to the point where we can go from a video of a process to a design of what that automation needs to do. And over the next year, we'll be doing the coding as well. So the aim is that we've hit this point where, at least for relatively non-complicated processes, you just show one of our digital workers a video, and it can start executing an automation if you want. And that's the ultimate expression of this. But yes, I mean, that's where it's going, and that's the demand from the market, is that the human workforce and the digital workers are fully integrated. They're effectively colleagues, and at the very least, humans can train digital workers. Maybe 5 years from now, digital workers will train humans, but I think we're still ways away from that.
And I think RPA-based automation is also moving up the food chain in terms of its impact now. And traditionally, it was used for things like tactical process, efficiency gain, etc. But can you tell me a little bit more about how it's now becoming central to achieving more corporate goals, such as growth, profit, competitiveness, customer service? Because these are all the magic spots that people are chasing now, aren't they?
Yeah, it's gone the same route that data analytics went.
Yeah.
So way back when I started doing it, it was done very tactically. You sold to middle managers, and today you've got chief data officers sitting on board. I think automation is about to go through that same process. So what we're hearing from our customers and what they're demanding actually is they want to move away from that. Well, they still want the tactile. I don't want to say it's going away from that. I mean, that's still very important. But what they want to do now is they're starting to realize that automation is a strategic enabler. And so I'll give you a great example would be UK building societies. And so they're challenged by fintech right now in that, fintech are coming around and saying, hey, we've got a 5-minute mortgage approval product and a snazzy, shopping experience to boot. So the building societies are realizing that, the only way they're going to really be able to respond to this is to think about automation strategically. And their goal is to be able to deliver what they have is actually an amazing product. You think about it, it's a banking product that doesn't derive a profit. The profits all go back to the savers and the borrowers. So they got this amazing product for today's climate, but they can't reach their audience as well. So what they want to do is look at automation from start to finish and in a very strategic way. And they're measuring the value of that automation, not in terms of efficiency savings or the number of processes they complete. They're measuring the success of automation in terms of revenue, in terms of market penetration, in terms of market growth. And that's the big change is that connection between automation and strategic gain. And so right now, I mean, it's very easy to get in front of chief financial officers, chief digital officers, chief technology officers, and CEOs to talk to them about how automation can help them solve what they're trying to solve. And that's where you want to be. And that tells you that automation has now reached the point where it's no longer seen as a technology. It's now seen as a way to run your business. It's seen as a tool to grow your business, to improve your customer service, or whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So it's a very interesting time to be in this space.
Now, you have led the development of a wide range of data-driven products and services in things from travel, consumer analytics, HR, pensions, insurance, portfolio management. It goes on and on. But I'm curious, are there any trends that you've seen that are occurring across all those industries and more right now?
Yeah, and it's this is how I wound up at automation. It started with data. So everyone started realizing that, and they go through two phases. The first one is you start using it purely, on a sort of customer contact basis, because you realize, hey, if I understand my customers better, I can serve them better. And so if what people were doing is looking at, how do I use data to track what people are buying? If I've got an online presence, you can get quite sophisticated with that. And then gradually what people realize is that, I can use this for revenue optimization with my suppliers. I could use this for optimizing my supply chain, and it starts infusing everything in the business. And it starts out, becoming, going from tactical to strategic, and all of those industries went through that. And I'm seeing the same thing with automation today. They're all starting to look at, automation tactically, and now they're starting to, probably led by financial services at the moment, starting to realize this is strategic. The other new big growth area for it in that respect is healthcare because of COVID. And I think it's really brought home, COVID's had such an impact on healthcare systems' ability to deliver to customers, to patients, is they've realized they really need to think about more, very, very carefully and strategically, how do you make sure you are getting the maximum, dollars to your patients and not on your back office. And there's been an explosion in automation and data-driven techniques there. But all those industries, just by the fact, I wound up in them, was they were all going through that revolution. And it's rinsing and repeating now with automation, but it's just going a slightly different route. It's sort of you can see it in financial services in response to fintech. Retail is taking off in response to the Amazons and the Walmarts. Healthcare because of COVID. And manufacturing now because of stresses in supply chains, and they're starting to realize that there's a lot of work in automation there that can be done to make supply chains faster and more nimble, but also more resilient. But it's the same. I guess I'm old enough to see, you see the same rhythm, just a different technology. Although the two are related, to be honest.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research on Blue Prism, and one thing that immediately stood out was for the third consecutive year, you've been named in the Gartner Magic Quadrant as a leader for robotic process automation. So I've got to ask, what does that mean to you and your teams? It's an incredible achievement, isn't it?
It's really, really important to us. We look at intelligent automation, which is basically RPA merged with artificial intelligence. So it's really just taking RPA-based robots and making them more intelligent, more capable, more flexible, and more agile. And so that's very nascent technology. And even the RPA space, which has been around for 20 years, is changing, by the month. So, what we're trying to do is one, learn from the market and understand what's going on in the market. What do our customers want, and making sure we're responding to that. But at the same time, we're doing the old Henry Ford thing. We recognize that, we can't just make faster horses. We got to build cars. And so we see the analysts as really, really essential in that process, both in terms of understanding what's going on in the market. Because they're talking to everybody. They're talking to our competitors. They're talking to our customers, our competitors' customers. And they're a fantastic view on the market. And some really, really smart people in there, thinking and analyzing market trends. So we see the analyst is a really, really critical part of our understanding what's going on in the market. But at the same time, we're also doing thought leadership. We have our views on where the market's going. We have our views on what you can do with this technology. And we spend time with the analysts to share those ideas with them and hopefully get them promoted in the market. So for Gartner to recognize us like that, it's a recognition that we're doing the right things. And two, it just cements our relationship with them, and that it just demonstrates that our participation into the thought leadership of the market's paying off, and that not only are we learning something, we're also contributing as well, and I think that's really, really important to us given the state of the technology and just how fast it's moving.
And before we started recording the podcast today, we were talking about the world opening back up again, overseas meetings, hybrid working, so many big changes going on at the moment. So I've got to ask, as we're preparing for life in 2022, what's next for Blue Prism? I appreciate you can't share too much, but is there anything you can share about your focus for the road ahead?
Yeah, it's on two levels. The first one is that we're really focused on intelligent automation and dramatically increasing the capability of digital workers. And that's mainly in two ways. One is the automation of creating automations. Customers want to scale, and the more we can automate the process of creating automations, the better they can scale. So that's one direction. The other is related to AI and RPA, is making the ability of digital workers to interact with different systems and people more sophisticated. And the goal I sent to my team is, if a customer comes to us and asks if they can automate, that system over there, or can the automation work with that human interface over there, the answer should be yes, and it's easy and it's cheap to do. And so that where we're definitely heading is the technologies around just making it very, very easy to apply automations in regardless of the platform or environment you're working in. The other bit is, which we've already talked on, is the strategic enablement of automation. One of the heavy themes you'll hear, the Gartners and the Forresters and the IDCs talking about is the sort of platform technologies you need to manage automations at scale. So we talked earlier about automation as becoming a strategic enabler. That requires more than just sophisticated digital workers. And it requires some additional capabilities that enables digital workers to work cohesively with humans and with straight-through processing systems. And that's a big area of focus for us as well, is those capabilities around true unified workforce enablement at very large scales and for strategic enablement.
Well, we began our conversation today talking about your origin story, the brain scientist that lost his way and ended up in technology. But a question I always like to ask my guests is if there was a particular song or piece of music that has inspired or accompanied them throughout their career in tech, or just helps them get their head in the zone. Is there a song and a story you can share with us today? And we'll add that song to our Spotify playlist.
Yeah, it's funny you ask that, because I'm a musician, and when I'm not doing tech or worrying about brains. And I actually keep the two separate. And I don't listen to music while I work, because what will happen is I get distracted by the music, and I'll just start listening to the music instead of doing the work. And but on the other hand, if you ask about inspiration, I do quite a lot of public speaking. I mean, you think about it, when you're trying to do thought leadership, really your job's communication. Yeah. And something I learned very early on is that when you're speaking publicly, or even speaking to an individual, speaking is theater in many ways. And if you think about, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. I mean, if you're speaking, in a sales context, in a technology context, it's a large crowd, thousands, or just one person. There's always a theatrical element to it. And if you think about the teachers that have inspired you, they all had a little bit of a feel for that. That's what made them good teachers. So if I were to pick a song that inspires me in that respect, I would choose Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, because I think, one, they've taken an entire opera, condensed it into a 3 or 4 minute song. And even though, its subject's quite serious, the whole thing's done a little bit tongue in cheek. And I can imagine they were grinning ear to ear the entire time they were recording it. So that would be my vote. It's just because it's a reminder that no matter what whenever you're trying to communicate, it's important that you make it engaging, and you don't have to go over the top, but a little bit of theater in there, is always good, because that's what really good communication is.
Completely agree. What a great choice. I'll be adding that to the playlist for people listening. And if they want to find out more information about Blue Prism, the work you're doing, or contact a member of your team, what's the best starting point?
Yeah, so I first directed to blueprism.com. We've got a pretty rich web presence, including training programs. If you want to learn about not just what the company does and what's happening with intelligent automation, you can actually get training materials and start actually doing it yourself if you want. And if you want to get in touch with me, more than happy for you to. Very, very keen to engage with people out there. So you can probably, if you just look me up on LinkedIn, so you just go Eric Tyree, Blue Prism on LinkedIn, you'll find me.
Excellent. I'll add those links to the show notes so people can find you guys nice and easily. Love chatting with you today. Yes, about the immediate future of automation and the unified workforce, where work is distributed and integrated across these AI-driven robotic workers and human workers. Such an important message there. But more than anything, for sharing your story and what put you on this path, and finishing off with a great tune too. But thank you so much for taking the time to share that with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
Once again, the big takeaway for me here is that businesses that think automation and RPA and other technologies are actually a great opportunity to, hey, let's cut costs and cut headcounts, are being incredibly short-sighted and will get left behind. But it's the businesses who play that long game of getting the best out of AI, automation, RPA, etc., alongside the best of their people. And having both technology and people working seamlessly side by side, they will be the ones that thrive in a digital world. They will move quicker and more efficiently. It's a topic we could talk about for hours, but I'd love to hear your viewpoints on this and insights and experiences. If you have heard of companies wanting to cut out people and just going with a tech issue, and you've been screaming about everything we've talked about in this episode, or if you have an alternate viewpoint, I'd love to hear that too. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast today, and remember to check out Hirect, the sponsors of this month's podcast. The Hirect app uses advanced data technology to efficiently match job seekers and recruiters, all based on their preferences and behaviour. Rather than hanging around in your inbox, you get curated candidate recommendations that fit your job requirements. And their technology also means you can chat directly with ideal candidates in much the same way as you would on something like WhatsApp. And in doing so, you accelerate the hiring process up to 10 times faster than traditional ways. So for me, anything that eases pressure on the already bulging inbox and waiting around for replies, worrying if they've gone to the spam folder, has to be a great thing. Remember, you can download Hirect from the Apple and Google Play Store for free. Give it a try. Let me know what you think. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Keep your questions, comments, insights, experiences coming over. But a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.